Hey, what's going on, gentlemen?
What's up, Sean?
Hey, Sean.
Hey, so today's like kind of a special day for service to sales vets helping vets. I brought in a prior teammate of mine from 5th Special Forces Group, retired veteran coordinator for ServiceNow, and also an author of a pretty good transition book that you guys can check out. And then I brought on for the first time my CEO of Shift Group, J.R. Butler, who's been sponsoring the last 5 of these. And I just thought it'd be a good idea to bring him on with someone like Herb and ask him some pretty good questions. And the goal is to get to what kind of value do veterans bring into the workforce? And, for us specifically, Herb works in tech, so what kind of value does, service members bring into tech? And for us, it's tech sales. So, hey, Herb, I really appreciate you joining us today. JR, appreciate it. So, JR, I'll let you start off if you got any questions for Herb.
Yeah, Herb, I'm kind of curious to know how you landed in the technology industry specifically. I saw you did some management consulting and things like that. What led you to the technology industry?
Yeah, no, thanks, Sean JR, for having me on. By the way, Sean, smart having JR on as a guest co-host. When that's the CEO, it's always good to throw him a bone every now and then. So very, very wise on your part. I retired just over 4 years ago out of the Army, like Sean said, 5th Special Forces Group. And it's all I'd known was the military. I joined at 17. The short story is I broke down what I liked about my military career. And a lot of it was problem solving, working by, with, and through people, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, oh, that looks like management consulting. I did that for about 3 or 4 days. I actually ended up doing it for 2 years. But by day 3 or 4, I knew this wasn't it. And some of it, quite frankly, was some of the stuff, Sean, I experienced before is don't quite fix the problem. Just put a Band-Aid on it. So that way, we're still here for years and years. And I was like, no, we could actually fix this problem. So I just saw that and I was like, this isn't for me. It doesn't give me the impact that I'm looking for. So I quit that job, not knowing what I was going to do. My fiance, Corey, was pivoting careers too. So I'd talked to her about it and I just walked upstairs hey, I quit. I put in my notice and she was like, holy crap. Okay. And I was like, well, we're going to figure this out. Right. But tech is, hey, let's be real. Technology is not going away. Technology is only becoming more of part of our lives. So there was that side of it, but it was hey, there's not a lot of veterans in tech comparatively to what our overall numbers are across the U.S. So I started looking for tech companies, et cetera, that piqued my interest, that really a culture I was looking for. And I found it at ServiceNow.
What about the culture? ServiceNow is an incredible company. One of the best, I think, in the whole ecosystem. What about their culture kind of called your name from the veteran background perspective?
Really, it was 2 things. One was the business works, right? The business is phenomenal, the growth, the technology. I'd used it as a management consultant. So I knew the technology worked. I knew it was going places. It's what people needed. So that checked that block. And that's out of my area of expertise of the technical part, right? It's good. And then it was, hey, what am I looking for? Where is a place making an impact that I can make an impact? And I saw there was a chance to get in here and do more for veterans, seeing that this company was growing. We're now up right around 21,000 employees. A year and a half ago when I came here, we're probably 18,000, 17. There's been a huge growth. Go back 3 or 4 years and it was only 4,000 or 5,000. So not just us though, the ecosystem, all the partners out there that are doing ServiceNow work. So I thought it was a very big way to still do some global work, but mostly impact the U.S. and veterans and truthfully companies and communities around our country.
So JR, I got a question for him. Herb, so you got a lot of people approaching you all the time, vets trying to get into ServiceNow. I see a couple. I saw there was an SF guy that was an account executive over there. Do people ever ask you about sales or that, hey, I want to come in and be a salesperson, or do you push them to that career path? Or, how do they end up with vets and sales over there?
No, that's a great question, Sean. Right now, there's not a formal process, full disclosure. I'm always transparent. But that to me is a lot of times when we talk veterans, right? Oh, veterans are this. It's no, it's not a monolithic group that just does X, right? We're a subsegment of America. We all want different things. So there is that. There are people that, hey, let me be involved with tech. But when we say tech, and I mean this affectionately, there, could be some old school people like me. It's like nerds in the basement, drinking Monsters, eating Doritos, developing code. We have those people, but there's everything else that goes with that, like sales and the other business functions. So yeah, sales is a way. What we do, the program I run currently is get people trained on ServiceNow, get them the ServiceNow knowledge, how they leverage that to do anything else. We make some connections, but also is partly on them, right? To how do they leverage the knowledge of what they've learned about ServiceNow over the 16 weeks.
So there's like a big kind of self-discovery portion of it too. It's like get to know the technology, the problem that you solve, the type of companies you solve it for, how ServiceNow approaches that problem solving, and then trying to figure out, essentially look internally to say, where's the best place for me to fit into this puzzle?
Yeah, JR. And really, when you look at it, how do you run a program that has E3s that may have done 3 years and someone who's a senior enlisted, E9, or, an 05 lieutenant colonel from the Army? How do they all go through the same program? It's the exact same for the most part. And it is because, hey, come get your ServiceNow knowledge, augment that to your previous background, whatever that is, and then move forward with what your interests are. So we attempt to expose them to as many roles as possible, having people come in and talk about it, have people, what's a day in the life of a salesperson? What's a day in the life of a solutions consultant, et cetera? And then a lot of them will leave our program, become developers and technical consultants, but others will leave, become project managers, program managers. We have had some going to sales, going to our solutions consulting, the technical side of the sales team, customer success, and something like sales. Sean and I were talking a little before we got on here. Veterans, it's not a natural thing, right? Because we weren't necessarily selling stuff in the military. We weren't necessarily dealing with customers also, but a lot of that relationship building that goes along with customer success and customer engagement roles, vets are kind of a natural fit for that based off of what they did in the military.
Totally.
So Mark's he's a cold calling guy in my network that runs a LinkedIn Live. That's pretty cool. He liked your beard, Herb. He said very competitive. Scott's got a question too, real quick. I'll let you answer this, Herb. What type of category or roles does SkillBridge training set you up for? I don't have a lot of knowledge on SkillBridge, to be honest, so I'll let Herb take this.
Yeah, that's a complex question. I think Scott means ServiceNow SkillBridge, but I'll even pull back more. So SkillBridge is a program with the Department of Defense, Department of Labor, Veteran Affairs. Says, hey, in your last 6 months of active duty service, you can not have to go into work if you get paid, you get approval, and you'll still get paid, and you go get training. And it's supposed to help people land in companies across this country and have a smooth transition. SkillBridge is at over 2,500 companies across the U.S. There's a lot of the big name companies, brands have it. And then small ones you've never heard about have it. ServiceNow SkillBridge specifically is meant as a training upskilling program to get people into the ecosystem with no one role in mind. Now, yes, a lot of it does go towards the developer, technical consultant, very technical, very a little bit of coding. Think, again, going back to my talk about, hey, nerds in their basement, right? That's where it goes. But hey, how does someone who has some project management experience, how does someone who has interest in customer service or something like that leverage that knowledge of the platform? They now know that to then go into other roles and do that in the ecosystem. So really we've had, probably over a dozen roles people have left our program and got hired for across the ecosystem. So a lot of it is what's the person want to do? And there is some kind of search for that of, hey, what do we want to do when we grow up?
Hey, Herb, you brought up a good point. So you got in your program, you have anywhere between, a 4 year E3, E4 that did one tour in the military and got out, and you got 05s and sergeant majors. We kind of deal with that in our company too. Is we'll take anybody. And how do you deal with or talk to these people about having like a beginner's mindset? Because there's like such a a breadth of experience between an E3 with 3 years in and an O5 with 22 years in. So like, what kind of advice can you give to people that are watching about, like, after you transition or you're doing a skill bridge, like having that beginner type mindset and how important it is?
First, I start with myself and I say, hey, look at me. I am the only person ever in the history of the United States Army to earn the Green Beret and be the Army's Drill Sergeant of the Year. I'm the only person ever. Guess what? When I just went and pumped gas earlier today, it costs the same. When I got coffee, it still costs the same. No one cares, right? It doesn't matter what I did unless I leverage my experience, right? So I start with that and say, hey, one of our core values at ServiceNow is stay humble and hungry. And I always tell people, you'll get out of the program what you put into it. You got to work. It's actually something I think is getting a little better, but one of the biggest issues with veterans transition out of the military is that hunger and motivation to succeed. We all had it when we went. We either had it or some, on the listed side, some drill sergeant said, hey, or drill instructor said, hey, you're going to get motivated today and I'm going to motivate you. We had it, right? We were full of piss and vinegar, ready to go. Hey, this is our dream. Let's do this. Or this is why I'm doing it for college money. I'm serving my country, etc. But we were motivated. You got to have that same hunger when you get out. And that's where I start. If you're going to rest on your laurels, whether you're 25, 35, 45, 50, most of us veterans have a lot of life left after service. So are you going to just sit around and walk around with your veteran hat on and, go to the parades and then that's it? Or are you going to have more to offer in life? And we don't need to wear a uniform to still serve and to still do good things and still to do, to push ourselves and challenge ourselves. So that's really where I start, Sean.
Appreciate it.
We dealt with it like early in the business before we started going like full bore into the veteran thing with like NHL and NFL guys being like, I played in front of 30,000 people. You want me to, make 60 grand and make cold calls. And I think like having that, like, it's like eating a little humble pie and being like, listen, like the sports analogy is you got to carry the water bottles again, just like you did when you moved from college to pro. It's like, this is a new industry. And part of it, I think, is it feels like, Sean is similar to you, Herb, in that you guys are both fairly self-aware. Like you guys kind of know what drives you and what key parts of your personality are important to feed. But not a lot of people are like that. Do you find sometimes that the ones that do the best have some self-awareness and the others have to kind of dig in and do some self-discovery of like what part of them they really need to feed in their career after service?
For me, having self-awareness is key, right? It's not by accident that Sean and I have that. I mean, it's part of what, being a Green Beret is and what we're selected for and then trained, et cetera, and spend years, quite frankly, probably in many cases, you could say we're alive because of that self-awareness and situational awareness. So there is that, but also it's, hey, life's going to make you self-aware. It'll teach you if you're not. Like you said, that humble pie, life's going to come crashing down on you if you are not self-aware. So you better get it. And I do see that people are motivated, but also I'm going to be honest. I love veterans. I love all of my brothers and sisters that served. We're kind of spoiled. Not kind of, we really are. I talk with veterans from around the world. There's about 50,000 veteran service organizations in the United States. And I'm going to take go back one level. When I was in the military, if I needed something done, hey, I need my paperwork fixed. I need something for my records or I need my pay. I went down to an office. I didn't pay anything and they did it. Same with supplies, et cetera. So you get used to kind of people doing some stuff for you. And just like you said with the NHL or any other kind of professional athlete, you get used to people doing stuff for you. And a lot of it's that mental of like, oh, I'm important. Once you're in the military for a few years, you have some people reporting to you. You're doing some important stuff. At an amazing young age, people are doing some ungodly, imaginable, important stuff and critical things. And then you come home and you're bagging the groceries, right? It's like, it doesn't compute of how do you do that. And you have to just adjust and go, that was then, this is now. Let me go make myself successful again, like I did in the military.
Yep. So as far as like attributes that Hey JR, what's the athlete attributes that you're always preaching? I just wanted to run those by Herb and then see what he thinks vet attributes are out in the workforce.
So we talk about basically resiliency, competitiveness, coachability, work ethic, teamwork, and then character and trust and accountability. Like, to me, those, like, I think it's 9 total. Those 9 characteristics, understanding them, being able to talk about them, and then being able to apply them to whatever you decide to do next. If it's sales, great. If you want to be a 3rd grade teacher and you can leverage those, it's a game changer. So those are the kind of the 9 that we focus on, Herb.
I think it's very similar for veterans. I always say grit. Whether it's just going through training, combat, etc., there's grit and resilience. I'll lump them together. I always say teamwork. Tell me a more diverse team than the United States military. You're going to be hard pressed to find, hey, it doesn't matter where you came from, how you pray, what the color of your skin is, any of this other stuff. We have a mission and less accomplishment. And the only way we're going to do that is do it together. So you're able to work in team. Like, the little things don't matter. It's, hey, we need to stay alive, and you work together as a team. Leadership. Hey, the military doesn't own leadership. There's many places in the world to learn leadership, get a leadership experience. But like I just said a few minutes ago, from a very early age, you have 19, 20, early 20-year-olds. Life's in their hands. Big time decisions in their hands, whether it's life or whether it's, hey, are we going to, shoot X, Y, or Z? There's big time decisions. So I'll go into that as decision making too, right? One of the misconceptions I do believe is that the military is robotic and they only follow orders. And the only way you lead in the military is by telling people what to do. No one storms a machine gun nest, to be kind of hyperbolic. No one does that because, hey, Sean told me to go do that. It's like, no, you got to inspire people, right? You have to do that. And you also have to be a good follower. So the military teaches you to be a good follower. Trainability. You said coachability, trainability. Where else? From day one in the military, you learn a lot and you learn it quick. And then you have multiple jobs, even if it isn't your primary job. So those are the ones I usually point to. That what you said, what I said, what employer would not want that?
I know.
Like, come on, seriously? You want someone, oh, by the way, they're going to show up on time. They'll probably be a little early. They're going to run through a wall and work hard for you and be loyal. And you could not ask for a better teammate. Who wouldn't want that person working to their left and right? Whether it's physically in a warehouse office or whether it's like this virtually.
The creativity thing is such a misnomer that I hear from, I was a chief revenue officer and a VP of sales for 15 years. And, I hear that a lot from my peers being like, well, they're process driven. So, if we need creativity, and actually Sean made me read the Mission Command white paper I think it was by General Dempsey. Hopefully I have that right. And now
people think I'm a dork, JR. I can't be saying that out loud, man.
I knew it.
I don't think anyone that knows you thinks you're a dork, John. Don't worry. But I've been texting that to people who push back on the veteran part of our business. And I'm like, dude, that's not how it works, man. Like, yes, they're set on the mission, but that's what it is. It's like, we're going to figure out how to get this done. There's actually a ton of creativity at the end of the day, in my opinion.
Hey, real quick, Herb, I'll tell JR a story. I don't think I've ever told him this. So, like, when they were choosing the teams from our group to go into Afghanistan, like the horse soldier teams, they did what they do, JR, is they isolate, plan, and then they brief it back to the commander. And there was only a certain amount of slots, like only 5 teams could go out of like 20 or something like that, right? The 5 teams that got picked are the ones that didn't, essentially, because there was a lot of unknowns. Like, there was more unknowns than knowns, and the ones that were like crying about not knowing about their medevac time, if they got wounded, how long it's going to, the people that were crying about that stuff to the commander didn't get picked. And the teams were they're like, hey, we'll just figure it out because we're Green Berets and we're resourceful. And we trust in our training were the ones that got picked. It wasn't the ones that were like that wanted all this stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, that creativity, ingenuity, like you have to figure it out. And when you're, especially in that case, you're in a faraway land with minimal to no support, possibly, you have to figure stuff out. So it isn't just let me follow. The military is good at following a process. Like another thing I think of military that's good at that people don't necessarily think, franchise ownership, right? Because, hey, they give you a manual and they say, run this sucker. Now, there's going to be a little bit you do on your own, but it shows you how to do it. That's the nature of the military. They give you a book and you go figure it out. The problem is a lot of stuff isn't in the book, right? So a lot of life isn't in the book, especially when you're talking sales. Like, how do I train or teach someone to talk with someone else and know this is the time to go for it, or this is the time to pull back, or this is the time to make a joke? We could debate it. I don't think you can train that, right? You learn it over time through experience, and those situations that the military puts people into gives them that creativity. And like Sean was saying, I've talked to horse soldier guys like from that era. Like, it's just crazy to think about them planning and how they went in. Like Sean said, like, hey, we don't know. We're going to figure this out. It's going to take months, etc. And I just love hearing stories from them. Like one time at the time, Colonel Mulholland, now Lieutenant General retired, was like, hey, can you drop bombs out of B-52s? And they're like, yes. He's like, all right, you're going in. As soon as he walked out, they're like, wait, can we really do that? But they're like, we'll figure it out. Like, hey, there's a bird. We can figure it out. We will. Like, there wasn't like, no, or let us think about it. It was, yes, we could do it. Let's figure it out how.
Yeah.
You got anything else, JR?
Well, Sean, like, we talk about this a lot, how like they're the misnomer on the creativity, and then the misnomer that like, a lot of people that, don't know folks that served in the military or just kind of have their knowledge of the military is from the movies, right? And they think every person that comes out has like extreme PTSD that they can't deal with. And there's some nerves around that. Sean, I don't know if you want to add color, because we faced it in a few of our meetings. And like, just talk a little bit about that, Herb, and how that's not really the reality of what you're getting. Like you said, you bundle veterans into this bucket, and it's not really fair, in my opinion.
It's definitely not. There's a couple ways I'm going to attack this, and it's just going to be straight fact. There's a mental health crisis in our country. I didn't say veterans. I didn't say military. I just said mental health crisis. You can look at homeless, drug addiction, et cetera, all kinds of issues. There is that happens across America. We just say, hey, these people are veterans. Oh, why do people think that? When's the last time you watched a show, whether it was streaming, a movie, big screen, little screen? What's a veteran look like in that situation? It's usually veterans broken from war, goes through some tough times, comes back the hero. Or veteran broken from war, comes home, can't get over it, and they kill themselves. Like, what other kind of has Hollywood / the screen portray veterans? So I get why, if you don't know, you're like, hey, I don't know any military people. That's what I know is by what I see there or in the. So yes, do we have mental health crisis? Yeah. Guess what? So does in the rest of America. But it's not like, hey, I was talking with Tom Satterley, Delta Force, retired, 30 years, sergeant, like, dude's done it all from Ranger Battalion and the Delta Force. And we're like, guys don't commit suicide, the ones we know, because they're over here going, man, war was tough. And they're thinking about it. It's how do they handle when they're having financial issues or marital issues, those kind of pressures that are normal in life that other people, God forbid, go down a bad track. Well, same thing with the veterans, right? So it's not anything like it's going to snap, but that's what you hear. It is that. And a lot of times, like, there's TBI, right? Traumatic brain injury. That's different. Post-traumatic stress. There's two different things, but they often get lumped together because anytime, like, I'll be honest, one of my kids recently was diagnosed on the autism spectrum. Okay. I've known for years, they're teenager, right? But now they get put into a bucket, right? And it's like, oh, what is this going to do here? And it's like, no, just normal person, right? Just the brain works a little differently than mine. Guess what? All three of our brains work a little differently too. It's not like something like that, but it is a common thing to overcome, right? Is if you've never been around veterans, and Sean's probably had a bunch of experiences like this, until they see it, especially from our community where we came from, and they're like, I don't believe it, but like it could be a simple situation. And I remember, if I may tell a brief, quick story for like 2 minutes.
Yes.
We got time, man. We got 45 or another 18 minutes.
So Sean would know these two people. It's Pete and Tony, and I won't go over the rest of their names. Well, one was a retiring Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel. One was a retiring Special Forces Sergeant Major, both from our unit, from 5th Group. And they went to this football game. We'll just call it the University of Tennessee because it was the University of Tennessee football game, right? And they were there, and they're with a big-time supporter financially of the Special Forces community as far as helping people after service, helping Gold Star families. And they were there, and they'd been there like 45 minutes at the game. And they're tailgating, and then they go up to the box up there. And this person owns a huge nationwide company. And they're like, hey, Pete, Tony, who out there would you not hire? And the guy had his college age kid or two there, plus the kid's friends, right? So it's a bunch of people graduating from college, about early 20s, right? 21, 22. Both of them immediately went, that one right there. And we'll just call him Jim. I would not hire Jim. And he's like, wait a minute, how do you know that? You've only been here like an hour, 45 minutes maybe. We had some, had a beer, had some food in the parking lot, and then we came up here to the booth or to the box. How do you know that? He's like, I've known that kid since, he was 2 years old. I wouldn't hire him, but I've known him for 20 years. How do you know that? And they're like, I don't know. We just know. Like, I could tell you by his action, the way he's acting, the way he carries himself around others, the way he speaks. He's the guy I would not hire. There's no way this person, this successful business, would have believed that beforehand. But since he saw it, he's like, oh, wait a minute. That's kind of crazy. How were you able to do that in an hour or 45 minutes when it took me like 20 years to figure out that dude was a douchebag, maybe, and I wouldn't hire him. But that to me is like what we're talking about with veterans. Stuff like that is, especially from our community, certain things that it's hard, you can't teach, right? Companies can't teach it. They can always teach you a sales process. They can teach you a widget, how to make a widget, how to do something, how to learn software, coding, whatever. A lot of those intangibles they can't teach.
Yeah.
And I went off on a little story there, so I apologize.
No, that's a good story. Another question I like to ask a lot of the veterans is, so you're a big LinkedIn presence. I think I forgot to check. Were you like 30,000 or something? 40, 50? I don't know. He's up there. Up there in like the hard to reach areas. But so like, especially soft guys, but even military guys, they just don't want to get on social media and market themselves, right? Especially like soft guys, unless you're like a Navy SEAL, and that's just a joke, by the way. But
and then you go write a book.
Yeah, but they don't want to market themselves and get out there and talk about stuff, and it's not helpful. So like, talk about like the importance of like networking outside of veterans that are in your circle and the people you meet in these like transition programs, and how to use social media to do it.
Hugely important. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for
Joe said
LinkedIn.
43. That's impressive. JR, what do you got? 13? I'm at 7 or 6 or
I wouldn't be here, right? I wouldn't be here, and not to brag, like I have a Cornell MBA somewhere right back there, right? It does nothing for me. It sits on the shelf and collects dust. I wouldn't have that if it wasn't for LinkedIn, right? I wouldn't have not wrote a book. I wouldn't be at ServiceNow. I could keep going. Like I wouldn't have my fiance because we kind of met through work channels or professional channels, and then it became a personal thing once we got to know each other. Hey, it's putting yourself out there. You said it. It's marketing, right? Things that we don't do in the military, it's frowned upon to be like, hey, look at me. It's all we, it's all the team. From our community, Sean, it's quiet professional. We take that to be silent professional. Like, I can't tell people I'm a Green Beret. Oh my God, if I tell someone I'm a Green Beret, that's a matter of national security. Dude, the Chinese have my SF-86 clearance. security clearance application, like they have it. They know more about me than I know about me. It's not that big of a secret, right? So part of it is embracing that, right? Is embracing that of, hey, is this a tool? And it doesn't have to be, making posts, and I guess the correct words are creating content, but it's like you said, Sean, engaging, networking, talking to people. Sean, what was one of the big things that we are supposed to do as Green Berets? Build networks, right?
Yeah.
Like we literally do that in a foreign country, and then we come home and go, nah, dog, I'm not building a network. Like what? It's like that silence, it hurts us, right? It definitely hurts us. And I always pick on SEALs. We, as Sean knows, we have a common joke with them. It's a brotherhood, but it's like, hey, people know what that is. When you stand up and you go, hey, I'm a Navy SEAL. Oh, shit, man, I've seen the books. I've seen, like, people know what it is. They have a brand. But for us, especially from our community, but veterans in general, it's not a, hey, look at me kind of culture. But no one's going to hire you if you don't know. It's kind of like when Sean and I, when you were a team sergeant, you had to sell the team. And if the team wasn't known to be good and you weren't doing the stuff to sell it, it wasn't going to get the good missions, kind of going back to what Sean said about going into Afghanistan, over 20 years ago. You have to sell the team. It's the same thing. Now you got to sell yourself so you can get that job, so you can get that promotion, do et cetera. But also about that curiosity to learn. Hey, let me get out here and learn from others. Let me learn from people. And LinkedIn is just not to get a job. It's, hey, go there to learn, to get useful information that I can use in my career. Sometimes personal stuff, but a lot of professional stuff. And we just have to embrace it. There's no easier way than, hey, embrace it. It's going to be uncomfortable. My first time getting on LinkedIn, I was so uncomfortable. It felt weird. I was more scared then than, doing a parachute jump or in a firefight. Sweating to go post. Oh my God. And really, let's be real, like probably 17 people saw that post, but it's like, oh my God. But hey, live in the comments. If you don't want to post, that's fine. Go out there, connect with people. Hey, would you be one that I'm a, transitioning soft leader. I'm a transitioning cook. I'm a transitioning pilot, whatever it is. Hey, I'm getting out of the military as an Air Force pilot. Hey, put that out there. Hey, would you have a conversation with me? I want to learn how you were successful. That's it. Hey, and then talk with them, and you get some bits of advice for your career, and you start building this network. And then once you know what you want to do, or as you get closer to know what you want to do, you start, focusing that network in, just like for sales, right? You're going to have some targets that, hey, I want to target this kind of demographic, this type of people, this area, this company, et cetera. Okay, now let me go in there and talk with people in the company and learn about it. That's all it is. And why wouldn't we want to have, in military terms, intel when we're going into an interview, or when we're going into a sales pitch maybe, or into a project? Why wouldn't we want intel? Well, there's no longer an intel shop to give it to us. We got to go create our own intel.
Yeah. You got anything on that, JR, or anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think I learned at a young age, like somebody once said to me, it's your network is your net worth. Like, and it's so true. Like, the reason I was able to start a business around helping veterans and athletes get sales jobs is because I networked the hell out of all the salespeople that I worked with. I worked at a partner to start my career. That means we sold, 50 to 100 vendors like ServiceNow, like EMC. And a lot of those people now are sales leaders at other companies. They were my first 50 customers. I didn't even have a website because I had gotten to know those people. And a lot of the times it was through LinkedIn that I got connected with them and started to get to know them a little bit. So it can be like life-changing. And it sounds like, Herb, for you, it was, if you use it right and get over that. I'm similarly, like, I think hockey is a very humble game. Like, it's a 5 guys on the ice all the time. The best players on the ice touch the puck for 45 seconds during a game. So it's very similar culture in terms of like not being a me guy. So you just have to get over that hump and realize you're not being me by having a brand on LinkedIn. You're just growing your network, which is so important.
Yeah.
You got to grow that network. It's essential. I'll say this. What kind of job can you have where you don't need a network? It's hard, right? And I'll say, honestly, what kind of business do you have these days without having social media? the farm stand down the road that sells like produce on the side of the road from where I live, they have social media, right? Because it's like, hey, you get with the times, you got to leverage, you got to communicate to people. But where else could you be sitting in, in my case, when I was retiring, like Sean and I talked about, like Tennessee, Kentucky area, like how am I going to reach out and talk to someone in Seattle, right? Or in Washington, D.C.? Like I don't have a Rolodex and I'm not going to go through some phone book, but I do that through LinkedIn. And that's really what I leveraged for, is I wanted information. I wanted to learn because I didn't know what I wanted to do next. Now it's different for me. Now I use it in a different way to attempt to do some good out there, right? Continue to make an impact, especially with our veteran community. And when I say veterans, I always include military spouses with that too. I want to help that community be successful because I believe our country needs it. And I believe our country will be better off for the more successful veterans and military spouses are around our country, because they know how to get along towards a common goal. So for me, LinkedIn's huge. We make too big a deal out of it. Like, when did we start talking? Most people a year, 2 years old. This is all it is. Like, why do we get so, I can't get on the social media? But I do understand the aversion, right? There's a lot of nastiness on social media, and especially on LinkedIn too. I'm not gonna lie, there's some of it, but especially in other social media, or usually the veterans are not the biggest Kardashian fans or that type of social media, because I'll just be real, it's fake. It's not authentic, right? Or like, hey, look at me, and there's some dude raining down his $100 bills and standing in front of a Lamborghini in a mansion, and you're like, dude, that's all rented for that video shoot, bro. I know that's not your stuff. Come on. Like, that fakeness, I think, is what keeps a lot of people away. But I believe you can really build your own community on LinkedIn. You get to control what you see, essentially, and who you talk with. So leverage it.
So this is going to be like a tough one, and it's not political by any means, but me and JR kind of talk about this all the time, and we use it actually as a decision-making process on whether we're going to partner with a company to send vets and athletes to. Herb, do you know how many vets quit their first job?
Yeah, I think I've seen a couple different surveys. COVID messed it up. Roughly 70% in like the first year. Fuzzy math.
Way higher than a college grad on their first job, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason I believe, and you can push back if you want, there's two reasons. The first one is the culture just doesn't match the personality, and they lied or tricked themselves into thinking they could probably blend in the culture just to get a job, and they didn't do deep discovery. And the second one is this like bad leadership. And so like what I tell veterans when I counsel them as part of shift group is like, at a minimum, you got to like your first line supervisor. They might be younger than you. They might be way off than someone you work for in the military. And if you can't get along with them, you're just going to be miserable. JR, before Herb answers, is you got anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I think like, you reap what you sow a little bit. Like, these companies sometimes use culture, work-life balance, like these things to recruit, and then they get the type of people in the door that don't want to be in a culture of accountability. And the type of people we work with need and want a culture of accountability. And I think that's where the biggest gap is. I think Sean experienced it. I've seen it happen before. And ServiceNow is like, obviously not like that at all, but there's a lot of companies that got a lot of money when it was free and hired a lot of people, and that stuff isn't flying anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I agree, in general, what you said, Sean, and what you said, JR. To me, I'm going to pull back even a little bit more of, we don't know what we don't know, and especially from the veteran, right? You have to dive into it and do that search. I'm only going to talk about myself for a second. I had two goals in life: was to be a drill sergeant and be a Green Beret. Check. What the heck do I do now? Like, there wasn't anything else, right? I didn't know, like, I couldn't keep doing that. I wasn't going to keep doing that. So I had to figure out, hey, what does this look like? So like you said, Sean, not doing that deep discovery and going, not so much about the job, but what about myself? What is that self reflection, that introspection of, hey, what do I like to do? What do I think will be good? And then once I figure that out, go and talk to people and go, hey, what do you do there? How's the culture? And not how's the culture, but really find out what it's like to work there and go, okay, yeah, I can see that. So we don't know what we don't know. Then like figuring out that culture of accountability, like you said, values driven, like it means something, not like, hey, there's values on the wall, but values driven, right? That means something to us. Having some type of honor, having some type of code, that means something to most veterans. Does your company have that? And then if not, and do they have it where it's on the wall, or is it actually demonstrated up and down the organization, or are people just cogs in the wheel? Veterans know what it's like to be a cogs in a wheel, just, go through a system and they'll hate it. So they'll leave. And then bad leadership, like you said, Sean. People, I hear a lot from veterans too. They'll be like, I worked for a-holes before I can do it. You can, but why? And then they'll be like, oh yeah, why am I, right? And sometimes it'll work out. Maybe it's just a personality conflict. But if you don't enjoy going to work, you're going to end up leaving. I don't care how much money it is. You're going to end up leaving it. So find out what it's like. So when you're going through the interview process, you interview them just like they're interviewing you. One of our friends getting out of the military, senior type jobs, right? Went through an interview process, got job offers from a couple companies. The company that was going to pay him twice as much, he turned it down. Why? One of the interviews was like a full day to where he didn't get a break. Like they took him to the bathroom. Literally, he didn't get a break because there was someone from the company with him in the bathroom, right? During lunch, all that. They didn't see him as a human. So he's like, no, I'm going to go to this other one. The, 2x, and we're talking a lot of money. It wasn't just, we're talking high six figures to almost seven figures. But he's like, no, I'm not going to do that 7-figure job because they didn't see me as a person. Because we have a choice now. But too many people don't do that, interviewing them and be like, is this really good fit for me? And sometimes, hey, we got to do what we got to do. But I told, going back to, hey, why didn't I like management consulting? And, very early on, one of my bosses sat down with, and I was like, there was a rock garden by where we were sitting out the window. And I said, hey, man, if I'm with the right people, I'll enjoy breaking them big rocks into little rocks all day long. And I'll do it because I'm with good people and we're going to enjoy it. And it's going to be fun. But if you're not with good people, doing the nicest job possible, that is the most, whatever the funnest job could be, can become miserable. And no one needs to live miserably. It should be fun to go to work. You should, in my case, I work virtually. So it's like, I should look forward to opening that laptop. If there ever comes a day where I don't want to open the laptop, then I got to look in the mirror and say, hey, what's going on? Because I should want to do that. Or I should want to, engage with my coworkers, do whatever my work is.
Wait, hold on. We got a question and then we'll close out. Trey says, great conversation. Herb's candor sold me on. Is there appetite to expand the program to the I don't know what that means. You just want to go offline? Hey, Trey, just hit him up offline.
I don't think yes, but it isn't a technical cohort though, Herb. They get to try everything, right?
It is very technical and learning the ServiceNow from a very technical circumstances for that case. But yes, we are looking at what's that. Just like when we talk sales, there's other operations of a business that veterans can go in there, and there's should be a good amount of veterans throughout a company, being in sales, being in HR. I don't care where you're at. Operation, keep going down the list. The technical people. So
maybe yes. We'll talk as boss and having people go through our program and they hire them. Sorry. But hey, JR, we're pushing up on the clock. I want you to get, if we need anything for the course, or what's the big question that you didn't get to?
Yeah, so obviously the Skill Bridge program, if you're currently serving in the military, is the biggest no-brainer I've ever heard of. I've heard about it multiple times. You get paid and you get to try a new career. So no-brainer. But Herb, what's your advice for the guys that missed that? They're a year or two out. They did that first job. They're part of that 80% that quit. Like, what is step one for those transitioning military veterans? What would you tell them to go do first?
First thing is to figure out, hey, What don't I like and what do I want to, or what will I like, right? And then, hey, what is my threshold? Can I just take off of work, right? Some will go back to college, right? And I'll just go use the GI Bill, I'll go to college, or I'll do some training program. Or like ours, we allow veterans and military spouses in ours. So hey, the problem is you got to take off work for 4 months or work on the side, right? Because it's a full 40-hour-a-week commitment. But research what's out there, right? There's a bunch of programs that are out there that you can do on the night and weekends. And when people always say I don't have enough time, I say BS.
Yep.
And I say, hey, it's all about how much time you make. I was working full time, doing Cornell on nights and the weekends, and I wrote a book and published it, self-published, all at the same time. Like, you can make time. I guarantee you I got less sleep, and my kids probably suffered for some weeks or time, but with not having me around. But you can make time. Or are you going to go play video games? Or are you going to go watch a movie? Or are you going to go insert whatever? You got time to make it to research. There's tons of great programs out there that you can either do full-time or you can do on the side. Or here's a crazy thing. You don't like what you're doing. And if you're in a good environment, go talk to your boss about it. Maybe they can move you around the company somewhere else, right? Maybe hey, just on Fridays, go over here and kind of on the job train with X. And then you can start moving around. I know that is like a very rosy-eyed look at it, but that can happen too, right? And sometimes you have to go, I'm out of here. I'm going to go figure it out. I'm going to go work at Lowe's or Home Depot or some place for a couple months while I, pivot to something else. So there's tons of options. The only option is, hey, I'm going to do it. That once you make that step, then everything else can happen.
Yeah. Anything else, JR?
No, man. Herb, thank you so much, man. This was awesome. This was just a great conversation. We really appreciate you giving us your time.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah,
go ahead. And then I was going to say you can pitch or, plug whatever you want to.
This is my burning question. What does JR stand for?
My mom told me that it stands for just right. But it's John Russell. You just let my secret out. Everybody wants to know that. So John Russell Butler. That's the full name.
Why'd you crack me? But all right. Well, hey, JR, thanks for coming on with me, man. It was pretty cool to do this with you. And then Herb, awesome. Man, I appreciate you helping a fellow SF brother out. We're just trying to get the word out. If they got a pretty good pipeline of athletes. They partner with the colleges and stuff. I'm having not a hard time. I got a healthy little pipeline of veterans, but it's all organic. So if anybody wants to learn about sales, our program's free, right? We don't charge anybody. It's self-paced. You can do it whenever you want, and you can self-select at any time, and nobody's going to say anything to you. So all you got to do is just go to our website, sign up, hit me up on LinkedIn, hit JR up. It doesn't matter. We'll get you trained up and in front of our 150 hiring partners and get you a tech sales job, and then we're expanding into pharmaceuticals and you name it. Like, we're trying to get into all sales. So if there's any veterans out there in your network, Herb, that hit you up and they want to be a salesperson, it's a great career. I really love it because it's kind of like hunting terrorists to me, man. It's like building target packets and finding people and all that kind of stuff, and I really enjoy it. So we appreciate you coming on, and Herb, you don't have anything else to plug or whatnot?
No, hey, if you're a veteran, go out and tell your story. If you're not a veteran, talk with a veteran. That's a simple plug.
Yeah, all right. Well, hey, have a good night, and hey, thanks for coming on, guys.
I see you, brother.
Yeah,
thanks,
man.
guys.